Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
A powerful evening routine provides you the following three benefits. Number one, it allows you to mentally and emotionally unplug from the day, which I know is something very challenging for busy, high-flying, hard-charging high performers. The second benefit is that an evening routine regularly ensures that you get the proper amount of sleep, which is also another thing that many people struggle with. And the third benefit of a powerfully designed evening routine is it allows you to wake up the next day feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. And yet for most of us, the reality is how we end most of our days sabotages our ability to start the next one with power, purpose, and confidence. So in my new book, On Purpose Leadership, I write about the importance of establishing practices like designing your own morning and evening routines so you can live and lead from a place of purpose in the 16, 17, and 18 waking hours in between the morning and evening routines. Because if you start your day in a frenzy and you collapse in the evening, there's no way that you're going to be living on purpose in those 16, 17, 18 waking hours in between. So today, Brian and I are unpacking a section of my book that's dedicated to designing your evening routine so that you can avoid drifting in the evening and instead end each day with intentionality and wake up the next day on purpose. So in this episode, we dive deeper into those three benefits that I just gave you of having an intentionally designed evening routine. I ask Brian 6 self-reflective questions to determine whether his evening routine is sabotaging him or not. And about a year ago, we did a similar episode on the evening routine, and we want to do a check-in here to see if Brian has put some of this stuff into action or not. So you'll have a chance to hear that. And I want you to reflect on those 6 questions as well, because they're primarily for you. We talk about the 3 stages of a powerful evening routine. And if you get these 3 stages down and design it in a way that feels good for you, you will master your evenings. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, when I learned how to master my evening routine, my total sleep went up, my quality of sleep went up, I woke up refreshed in the morning, my days are much more productive, my anxiety levels went down. It's like a domino effect. And then finally, we finish, if you stick around to the end, in the last 10 minutes, I share with you my 5 best sleep tools that I've invested in. These are products that have helped me to monitor and measure the quality of sleep that I get each night, and also things that allow me to sleep more effectively, wind down from the night. And I know that many of my clients love some of these tools. So stick around to the very end, and I also have those linked in the show notes. Enjoy today's episode around designing your evening routine, the 3 stages to master your night. All right, buddy, I heard that when you found out that we were going to be doing today's conversation on an evening routine, you gave yourself a little bit of a chuckle and a smirk. Tell me why.
Yeah, I laughed. Like, Dominic, you have this unique ability to always hit a topic that is timely, relevant, and sometimes ridiculous. And this one for me was no exception. So I saw the text message come through. It's like, we're doing evening routine. I said, that's hilarious because there is no evening routine for me right now. And I've got, as you know, I recently launched a business related to coronavirus testing and tracking for employers and groups. I have developers in Europe, which makes my mornings very early. I've got a 7:30 standing meeting with them. I've got clients in California. So I have meetings that run to 9:30, 10 o'clock here at night. And I do all the stuff to run a business in between those hours. So my nighttime routine, I mean, I imagine, Dominic, and we'll get into this, but part of the nighttime routine is probably setting a standard time to go to bed. And that's a joke. Like, last night was a 2:30 night for me. And so, yeah, it's like, I'm excited to talk about this, but we'll see how I implement it.
Yeah, we've got some questions for you, man, that will kind of give you a lens into how life is looking for you in your evenings these days. And it's challenging. You were talking about like 14-hour days, the life of a startup, right? I mean, like this is a unique period of time that you're going through. But also before we started recording, you were talking about how the pace that you're moving is not sustainable. In a certain respect, it feels intoxicating. Give a little context of where you were before this period of time, where you are now.
When somebody says I'm working on 14, 15-hour days, like that sounds, on the outside, it sounds like a drag. But when I'm in it, when I'm feeling it, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like every single thing I'm doing right now, it's not true. It's not every single thing, but most of what I'm doing right now is awesome. I love it. And I want to keep working. I don't want to go to bed and I want to get up. And that's what I'm feeling that's most different from just 3 months ago, where like I get up when I wanted to get up, when I felt like it, and or when my body woke me up. But I haven't had an alarm wake me up in the past month because my body's just like, bam, like ready to go. Let's do it. We got meetings. We got this. We got that. And it's exciting and it's intoxicating. And what I'm starting to now recognize is that the other parts of my life are starting to feel the effects of that because I'm going so hard, so deep on the business side of things. I'm not as present with my partner.
Yep.
I haven't been reaching out to my family. So when it comes to relationships, other than my business, my current business relationships, I've let those fall by the wayside. My health. So we're obviously talking about sleep tonight, but the other elements of health that I look at are around what am I eating? They're around am I working out? That's been a big one that's fallen to the wayside. I am skinnier and flabbier all at the same time.
Yeah.
Very, very sexy.
See, like your life right now is a really great lens. It's kind of a microcosm to look into the lives of many men where one of the things that we desperately seek in our lives is feeling a sense of purpose and meaning and fulfillment. And I know that preceding this period of time where you've launched this new business, COVID tracking and testing, which is super timely right now, you were in a dip, like seeking what that next big thing was going to be. And that can feel deflating, demoralizing. Sometimes it can feel like you're drifting and wandering. And so anything that gives you that sense of purpose and that energy back, it's intoxicating. And that's where you are right now. One of the things that we can do as guys is lose sight. We can get so hyper-focused, blinders on, mile deep in like this one area of our lives that these other areas, the other balls start to drop, the plates that we've been spinning start to crash. And it's only a matter of time before, like you say, like a feather starts to tickle you to say, wake up. And if the feather doesn't wake you up, then it's a 2x4 in the back of the head. And if that doesn't wake you up, then it's a Mack truck, right? And like this energy that like you're putting out is not sustainable. It can feel intoxicating, but it's not sustainable. My dear friend Terry Kelly, who I reference her story in my upcoming book on purpose leadership, where she experienced burnout. This was her lifestyle. She used to live like that. It would go from periods of lull to periods of, I'm going to take the world on, until she had a massive panic attack. 6 EMTs came to her house, put her in the back of an ambulance. She thought she was losing her life, having a heart attack.
Oh, good. This is what I have to look forward to. Fantastic.
Dude, and this is the thing, man. Like things will change. There's no way you're going to keep up the pace that you're on. You know that. We've already talked about that like offline. It's just a matter of, is it going to be your choice to make that shift in energy, or is it going to be your partner coming in and saying something? Is it going to be some other like health related issue? Are you going to have a panic? Like what flavor would you like? And as we talk about here on the show, it's always about you making that intentional decision.
And what it feels like, Dominic, because I'm in the moment, I am constantly, we talk about living out over our edge.
Yeah.
But where's the edge?
Yes.
It's almost like I'm experimenting with like, is this my edge? Is this my edge? Is this my edge? Ooh, maybe not. And eventually I will fall off that edge.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about, right? You're talking about whether it's health related, relationship related, or otherwise. So I think what's helpful and timely about this conversation about evening routines is that this is something that I can put more structure and control around. And that's going to drive a lot of the rest of my days. Let's
get into this. 2 important pieces of context for this conversation today about evening routines. The first, if we're going to pull it back to the macro level, you're going to hear me talk more and more about this with each new show, is that the world right now is craving strong masculine leadership. As we have gone deeper and deeper into this pandemic And as the tail on this thing seems to get longer, not knowing what the future is going to look like. And there are so many people who are stuck in negative emotions, who are drifting, who don't know which way is up. And there's no judgment when I say any of this. Like, this is unprecedented times, and people are just waiting. What the world is looking for are strong masculine leaders, strong feminine leaders too, but we're talking specifically to our audience of men, masculine leaders here, to chart the path forward. And in order for you to be in your strongest masculine leadership, you need to feel a daily sense of control, right? Like, you need to feel like you are tethered to and rooted to what's most important in your life. And if you think of the bookends of your day, your morning routine, your evening routine, if you are out of control in your mornings and your evenings, if you wake up frenetic, if you collapse into bed at night exhausted, and you get up and you do it all over again, it's impossible during those 16 or 17 waking hours in between the morning and evening routine. It's impossible for you to be living on purpose, right? So it's critical that you nail the mornings. It's critical that you nail your evenings, because over a course of time, if you don't have some structure, then you will end up drifting. And then one of these Mack trucks or 2x4s will end up hitting you in a way that the world doesn't need it right now. And certainly you don't need it either.
Okay, I'm sold, dude. I'll do the nighttime routine. Here we are.
Okay. That's one important piece of context. The only other important piece of context is that Brian and I started this conversation around evening routines a year ago. And we did an episode called 10 Ways That Your Evening Routine May Be Sabotaging You. And I asked Brian 10 questions about a year ago, and he gave some pretty interesting answers about like the areas of his life where like his evening routine was sabotaging him. I'm going to be asking probably 6 or 7 of those same questions today to see has progress been made, where if things started to get stuck again. And I encourage each of you at home to go through this on a personal level as well. Brian, are you already wincing at the idea of that?
I'm very curious what the answers are going to be, because I'm not sure what the questions are. When we jump into this, Tom, the evolution of Dominic, did you start with morning routines? Did you start with an evening routine? Where was this in your evolution?
Yeah, I started with morning routines. Maybe, again, another contextual point of this is if you want to live a life on purpose, then rituals and habits are a big part of the gateway to constantly living on purpose. And purpose is not something that exists in the future. Purpose is something that's lived in the day-to-day, in the moment by moment. And in the book, On Purpose Leadership, I talk about one of the pillars, the foundations of living a life on purpose is designing intentional practices that you do on a daily basis. Kind of like Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, right? Like, these are the things that every single day put you in the best mental, physical, emotional, spiritual mindset. For me, the morning routine was the first place I started. It's evolved over the course of time. We've done 2 or 3 episodes on the morning routine. But to answer your question succinctly, Brian, the morning routine was the easiest thing for me to master. The evening routine was the thing that I constantly struggled with. You know, by the end of the day, I always found that I was kind of like my discipline and willpower tank were empty. I just wanted to like collapse on the couch, eat something sweet, you know, whether it was like Justin's hazelnut chocolate butter or like a pint of Ben & Jerry's or a big bowl of cereal. Frosted Flakes was like my go-to. And then I would watch like an hour or 2 of Netflix, and then like that would wind me out, and then I'd go to bed. And that never really felt like a powerful way to end the day. Like, there was always a part of it that felt like a scratch to my itch, but then it also felt kind of yucky too. And I would always wake up the next morning never feeling fully rested. So the evening routine was something that I'd struggled with for a while, but over this past year, I feel confident to say that I have like mastered my evening routine. And I have stats to prove on my Oura Ring that have shown that I've increased my level of deep sleep by 67% over the last 6 months. And we'll go into that later on in the conversation today. But like, I have data to prove that I'm sleeping better. My body's recovering better. I feel more energized. And a big part of it was getting this other bookend of my day in order. Cool. Have I sold you yet, dude?
I'm sold, man.
Okay.
Let's do this thing.
So 3 things that a powerful evening routine facilitates. I've already kind of given you some of the benefits, but just to like really encapsulate this. A powerful evening routine, number one, will help you to mentally and emotionally wind down from the day. Think about that, man. Like when you are running your 14-hour days, chances are you may be going to bed carrying a lot of stress with you. Like, can you relate to that experience? Like, is there like a busy mind, or what's your life like when you go to bed after a 14-hour crazy day?
There's a couple variations. One is, and we'll maybe get into this in more detail, what I used to do very recently is I would read the news right before bed, which is always not a great way to go to sleep. I, for the most part, have stopped doing that. And part of it was I just wanted to catch up on what was going on because I wasn't doing that during the day, which, side note, has been kept me way more productive. I've stopped doing that for the most part. Now when I go to bed, part of my evening routine is I'll do, on a good day, on a day where I'm doing the morning routine, I'll have a little bit of breath work and a little bit of gratitude, which we can talk about later. But more often than not, I'll go to bed, I'll have just put my laptop, I just had closed it. I'm thinking through the features, the things that need to happen the next day, yep. And then I fall asleep.
Yep. There's a lot still in your mind, like as you're about to go to bed. And I know that many of the people that we coach together in the mastermind and the people that I work with in corporate and entrepreneurial spaces, it's like there is no end to my day. It's like always in my mind as I go to sleep. It's always in my mind as I wake up. So a powerful evening routine gives you a clean break. Like there is a point in the night where you can actually, using your own mind, using your own intentionality, create that shift where like the day is over and then you can spend the last few moments, whether it's like a half an hour, 20 minutes, maybe even an hour, just allowing yourself to wind down. We'll talk about that.
Dominic, have you ever had a situation where there's a problem you're trying to solve and then you're thinking about that before you go to bed, then you dream about it and you wake up and you're like, I can't say I've been doing that intentionally, but every once in a while I see a benefit in going to bed with these thoughts on my mind.
For sure. I mean, there's some times where it's like there is an issue that you can't solve with your conscious mind. Some of the greatest thinkers use that as a process. Like I think some of the greatest inventors like Edison and others, Benjamin Franklin, would like stop working on a problem, ask for help, go to sleep, and then wake up with a solution in their mind. Napoleon Hill, I think, did this quite a bit too. So for sure. But there's also like you run the risk of doing that every single night. And like, then your mind is always on. Yeah. I mean, like there's just understanding the different flavors of how you can play with that. Okay. The second thing that an evening routine facilitates is regularly getting proper amounts of sleep. Right? Regularly getting proper amounts of sleep. I know that many high performers, busy people constantly fluctuate with their times of sleep. Again, Terry Kelly, the woman who I just mentioned, she said that when she's in a state of overwhelm, the number one thing that gets sacrificed is sleep. And I know you're saying like recently, it's kind of like I'm on my California calls late at night. I'm on my European calls early in the morning. I'm now doing like 4 hours of sleep a night. And there's a difference between that being temporary and then that becoming a lifestyle, right? So a powerful evening routine has flexibility. Doesn't mean it's rigid that you're going to bed the same time all the time. It just allows you to know that when you're in a period of time like this, that this is temporary and eventually you will be getting back to a regular, proper amount of sleep protocol.
This is going to sound counterintuitive, but it feels when I'm doing that, it feels lazy. Like I haven't had the proper conversations with people to set the boundaries to say, look, like I'm not doing meetings at these times, or I am going to go to bed at this time. It feels like there's an opportunity there to have better conversations and get more in a shorter period of time.
For sure. And you don't need to tell people that like I'm having these meetings earlier because I'm going to sleep earlier. You can just say, listen, like this is the window that I'm available. But like for the backstage, yeah, I mean, like you can either keep this going until you burn out, or like your relationship has an issue or something, or you can start that now, right? That's the difference between drift intentionality. And the third thing that an evening routine facilitates is allowing you to wake up refreshed and ready for the next day, right? Like your morning starts the evening before. And if like you're needing multiple glasses of wine or alcohol, I'm not denying anybody enjoying like a wind down, but oftentimes like having too much in sugar in your system can cause restless sleep, eating too much, going to bed too late, whatever it is, waking up the next day feeling refreshed and stress-free is an entirely different experience than feeling groggy and hateful towards yourself for the night before, the last few things you did in that hour before you went to bed.
And maybe this is a little bit of where I'm in the danger zone, because I gotta be honest, man, I'm waking up feeling ready more than I had before, more than when I got more sleep, more than when I was in a morning routine, or I'm sorry, a nighttime routine. So again, maybe that's temporary and maybe that's not sustainable, but that third one, that doesn't feel like an issue for me right now.
Yeah, well, it's because like you're still in that honeymoon phase, right? We talk about there's different kinds of energy at different parts of life. When something new comes in, it's that honeymoon phase where everything feels great, right? And think about even a relationship. That person can do no wrong. All you're seeing is all the good things about them. And then there's like that honeymoon phase, and especially with your work right now. Like you came off of a period of time where you were adrift, deflated. Now things have purpose and meaning and there's a focus. And at a certain point, you're going to feel the wear and tear of that. And so like when that time comes, are you going to be able to downshift or just shift your energy into something different that will make it sustainable for the long haul? Because your business is not a 3-month business, dude, right? Your business is years, maybe decades, depending on like what this looks like. And are you building for the future, the long haul? Cool.
I'm sold again.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's start to ask a couple of questions around, is your evening routine sabotaging you? Brian, I'm going to ask you, of course, and we're going to do these kind of quickly. We're going to run through these in a quick fashion. And as you're listening to this, wherever you are, I want you to answer these for yourself. So obviously listen to what Brian has to say, but try these on for yourself. So question number 1, do you find it difficult to mentally and emotionally unplug at night?
Can you give a little more context? What does that mean to be emotionally and mentally unplugged?
So like when it's time to wind down and go to bed and like maybe you're laying in bed and then your mind is still racing from all the things that are going on today. Mind is racing of all the things that have to go on tomorrow. When you try to close your eyes, when you go to sleep, there's another thing that pops up, another thing that pops up, another thing that pops up.
For me, I don't, but I think it's because this is our second podcast on nighttime routines. I have put some tools into place on this one. So if I am feeling that way, and I have gone to bed feeling that racing. If I am there, I have the tools to put in place to help with that.
Like breath work and meditation, or like what do you...
Yeah, so I do 2 very specific things that are wildly helpful. One is we recently learned a breath technique from Dr. Miles Spar of Vault Health and the Get It Up podcast. And he taught us, it's called 4-7-8 breathing, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold for 7 seconds, and then you breathe out for 8 seconds. I do that. That immediately takes my physical body into a more relaxed state.
It's magic.
It's magic. It's amazing. Sometimes I fall asleep just doing that. If I'm still awake at that point, then what I do is I just ask myself a really simple question. What went well today? What do I appreciate about today? And then why do I appreciate that? If I made it that far before I fall asleep, I usually get 1 or 2 of those in, and then I'm out. So those are the 2 tools I use. Now, if I didn't have those tools, because I've been in those situations where I didn't have those tools before, I will get up, I'll pace around, I'll write on the whiteboard, and I didn't have these tools before. I'm wildly thankful for them now because I know that I can get to bed and fall asleep within minutes.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. So there's 2 new tools for you, the 4-7-8 breathing, and then what went well today? Why do I appreciate that? Gratitude practice. Cool. Question number 2 then would be, at some point in your evening routine, do you plan your top priority/priorities for the next day?
This is a good one. When I do that, I feel more relaxed. When I have that, literally you can see the whiteboard behind me right now. When I have that like ready to go, I can go to bed easier. I can't say I do that often though.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that it's such an easy thing to do that surprisingly few people do. People will kind of be emotionally wound up and then wake up the next day and go, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then not knowing how to fill that void. It's like, well, text messages and emails are like definitely there. So then you just kind of go into those smaller tasks and tactics, which doesn't create like an on-purpose life. So something simple, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is just like planning out a priority or your top priorities for the next day for it to be a win.
This is good. This is hugely helpful. I think I'm going to do this one more often.
It's such a simple, it's a game changer. Question number 3 would be, do you find yourself going to sleep at inconsistent hours?
I feel like up to this question, Dominic, I've been doing decent. Like maybe like a C plus, B minus range. This is F plus. No, I'm not. I'm not going to bed at consistent hours.
What's the plus on that F for? What's the plus?
Because nobody just wants a regular F.
Okay. Let me ask you this question because I want to be fair with this one for you. Like these last 3 months, you've been going to bed inconsistently. If you were to span back over like a 12-month period where you're looking at maybe like a more representative cross-section of your life, how would you answer that question?
C plus. So there have been times in which, probably after we did the last podcast, where I made it a habit to go to bed earlier. I did better there, but more recently, this has been a disaster.
Got it. We'll talk about why it's important to establish, to the best of your ability, some consistent sleep hours. We know that if like you have a family, young children, I know that when work was with travel back in the day, when that was a big thing for people, inconsistent hours is a reality of your life. But even making an intention to try and get more consistent with your sleep hours, there's an important part of circadian rhythms that allow your body to go to sleep and get into deeper quality sleep. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. Question number 4, do you eat within the last hour or two before bed? This was one I remember we talked about a lot in the last one. Brian's hands are pumping up in the air. What do you got?
Oh, I'm so proud of myself for this one. Now, I used to, Don, if we listen to the last podcast that we did, one of my big jams was to nail a box of cookies in bed within minutes of trying to go to sleep. I would Uber Eats. I would Uber Eats just cookies. And I am happy to say that I've had a few life changes since then. One of which is my partner and I have moved in together. Becca and I have moved in together and we share a bed. And so it would be just wildly embarrassing to do that. I mean, I can't even imagine an Uber Eats person showing up with cookies and me bringing it to bed. She would just look at me with so much shame and disappointment. So partially this behavior has changed because I'm in bed with another human. But the other thing is I started to notice how much better I felt in the morning when I didn't do that. Yeah. So the eating 2 hours before bed thing, I've been much better about than I have been previously.
That's awesome. I've actually... Man, I started with like an intention to not eat within 2 hours before bed. Now it's more like 3 hours before bed. And that's been like super helpful for my deep sleep, and my body's not spending time digesting. It's just allowing me to go to bed, and I can see the stats improve on my Oura Ring. So the next question we'll ask, number 5, is, do you bring your work into bed with you?
Again, helpful to have a partner next to me so that I don't do this, but I don't do this anymore. And partially, if in the last podcast, you gave me a great suggestion. You said there should be 2 different spaces where you live. One is your workspace and one is your sleep space. And now that I live in a different sort of setting with someone else, I have that very specifically.
Awesome.
And so when I go to bed, like that's bedtime. I might bring my phone with me. As I said, I read the news sometimes, but I don't bring work into bed with me.
Yet there's something energetic that happens that like confuses your body if like you go into your bedroom and the bed becomes the catch-all place for like watching TV and then doing your work and then responding to emails. And it's also supposed to be the place where you're being intimate with your partner. Like when all that stuff conflates with one another, then it's hard to unplug, right? It's like your environment becomes like depolarized. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you think about polarization in a relationship, it's like, when there's a real masculine essence, a real feminine essence, there's a lot of magnetism. And it's the same thing. Like there are places in my home when I know I'm sitting on the couch, that's to like relax, unwind, and to disappear in like great storytelling in a television show. When I'm in my bed, when I'm by myself, that's for sleep. You know, I'm not bringing any work in there. So like I'm very quick to fall asleep. It's usually within 2 to 5 minutes. And a big part of that is making sure that I keep my bed like a sanctuary for sleep.
I've been in that bed with you. I know what kind of sanctuary it is. It's very nice.
Yeah, well, you probably want to explain that to some of our listeners who have no idea what you're talking about right now.
One of our friends, Lila, runs a podcast called Horizontal with Lila, and she had us both on her podcast. And one of the things she does with the guests is she makes them lay down. The only obvious place that we could do this was Dominic's bed. So the 3 of us were in Dominic's bed with a microphone over our mouths doing a podcast. That's why I was in bed with Dominic.
There you have it. And question number 6, this will be the last one. This was a big one for the last time when we talked about sabotaging your evening routine. Do you consciously choose when to go to sleep, or do you pass out while on the phone or while watching a show or listening to something, like a podcast?
Dude, this is probably one of the biggest changes. The cookies was big, but this one's even bigger. This used to be my go-to. I would pass out watching a show, reading something. 90% of the time, it was pass out, not go to sleep. Now, it's close to 100%. I choose to go to sleep. This, of all the things we just talked about, I think this is the place to start if you find yourself passing out.
Yeah.
This was a huge game changer, and it allowed me to make a lot of the other changes.
Yeah, I know that was a big one for you. You mastered that one pretty quickly. I know that a number of people use the pass out strategy because sometimes it's hard to fall asleep otherwise. And I think a big reason for that is some of these other things that we talked about of mentally and emotionally unplugging, sleeping at inconsistent hours, your body's confused, not knowing when to go to sleep. So if you can start to master some of these things, they all kind of fit together. They work together with one another. So to close off this section, Bri, and for everyone who's listening, I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 right now. How would you rate your evening routine? On a scale of 1 to 10, what is the rating that you would give your current evening routine?
All right, I would rate my evening routine a 6.
A 6. Okay.
A 6 right now. Before it was a 3.
Got it.
But now it's a 6. It's not great, but it's different.
Okay. So that's a 100% improvement. If you do the math on that, right? A 3 to a 6 is a 100% improvement. What have been some of the, if you just want to say quickly what the payoffs are from going from 3 to 6, what have those been for you?
I've been way more productive because I go to bed and I fall asleep quickly. So there's not messing around for an hour on reading, watching TV or whatever. So I've been more productive. I feel more alive in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't feel as sluggish or as swollen. When I ate before going to bed, I would feel swollen when I woke up.
Yep.
And I didn't realize I was feeling swollen. It took me forever to realize, oh my God, I feel totally different. If you drink too much, you get a hangover. That's the cause and effect. And it's almost I wasn't getting that. I wasn't getting that big negative things. I couldn't feel it, but now I can. Then I could. So yeah, I feel more alive and less swollen in the morning. And when I follow my morning routine, I feel sharper throughout the day.
Yep. Cool. And that's how the two bookends work together. Now, you're at a 6. If you could bump it up to an 8, what kinds of payoffs might you anticipate? And this is what I want everyone at home thinking about too.
Well, right now my body is shaking, so I think that might stop.
Why is your body shaking?
It feels like it's shaking because I didn't get much sleep last night. So if it was an 8, I think what that would look like for me at least is a consistent bedtime, getting 7 hours. If I can do that, I feel like I'm at an 8 plus. What I think it would do, it would align my day better to be more specific of what I need to get done in that time period, as opposed to just letting it bleed into 2:30 a.m.
There you go. Great. When you start to prioritize your evening routine, it brings more structure to the rest of your day. And what you'll oftentimes find is that you can get the kind of sleep you're looking for and the amount of work done that you want to in the same 24-hour period. Whereas now there's that kind of belief of, well, I have so much to do that I have to sacrifice sleep. When you start to prioritize the evening and your sleep, magically other things start to fall in alignment. You just get better at doing what you're doing. You get it done faster. You know what I mean? That's how it works.
It's so true, man. I mean, there's been so many with this business, there's been so many times where I'm I could spend all day doing this PowerPoint presentation, or I can get it done in 2 hours, 3 hours, and then move on.
Yeah.
So it's a lesson in that, yeah.
But this is where it takes courage. And I really want men to hear this. This is where it takes courage to actually prioritize your sleep. It's easy to sacrifice sleep. I do not give you any credit for sacrificing sleep. It's the easy thing to do. It's like reaching for the Big Mac, the fast food or the 5-hour energy. And it's the easy thing. I think the courageous thing is to actually say, no, I'm going to prioritize my well-being. I'm going to prioritize this long game that I'm playing of my life. And knowing that if I do so, that I can get the work done in a shorter period of time at a higher level. That takes courage. That takes living out at your edge in a different way.
Dude, that's a huge mind shift. Or like what you just flipped that on its head, because I was wearing this badge of 14-hour days and 4 hours of sleep, and I'm still going. Still rocking it. Right? But you're like, actually, that's lazy. That's the lazy version.
We applaud the person who grinds it out and wears himself into a nub. But if you remember Madeline Moon, like 5 ways that men lose credibility with women, one of the things that she said that's been a game changer for both of us is lack of integrity with what we can and cannot handle, right? Like lack of integrity with what we can and cannot handle. And when we take on so much on our shoulders, we feel like a hero. And then we feel like, we're world beaters. And that feeling is temporary because eventually that same feeling becomes a burden. And then we want it to all go away. We've just heard recent examples of this in our men's group of like a lot on our shoulders. We love it that way. And then we just want to run away from it all. And there's an integrity issue there about like what we can and cannot handle for the short and long term. That is not sexy to our partners when we ignore them, when we come home exhausted and give them our impotent, limp dick or half-assed version of ourselves. So I'm going to make a call out to the guys who are listening to this to say, it takes courage to prioritize your well-being in the long run. And I'm no stranger to sacrificing my nights in the short term, doing a 4-hour stint here, a 5-hour stint there. But it's always with the commitment that that's a one-off. That's the exception. And I have no badge of honor around shortchanging my sleep. I'll get off my horse right now. Okay.
You were riding it hard, though. That was good work.
I was whipping that shit out of that thing. Okay, man. Let's move into the 3 stages of an evening routine that like I have used to really master my evening. And a lot of the clients that I've taught this have also found significant benefits. You've also used some of these things to move from a 3 to a 6, and then hopefully like from a 6 to an 8. And then we'll finish this thing off with some of my best sleep tools that have really like I enjoy in my life. And it's a really geeky conversation about the sleep tools. So 3 stages of an evening routine. Number 1 is shutting down today, learning how to shut down today to provide a definitive ending to this day. Number 2 is preparing for tomorrow, giving a glance, a nod, a prep work for tomorrow so you feel confident about how the day will unfold so you can have the greatest chance of success. And then number 3 is then doing the things that allow you to wind down and then go to sleep consistently with a clear mind and feeling confident for the next day. So those are the 3 stages, and we're going to go through each one a little bit one by one. Here are my recommendations on stage number 1, which is shutting down today. So if you have a hard time mentally and emotionally unplugging from the day, the analogy I'd like to give is back in the day before, like way before the internet, people had jobs where they would go to an office. The work would start when you got there, and then the work would finish when you left there. Right? There wasn't any work when you went home. You might have to watch like an episode of Mad Men to like really understand maybe like what parts of that looked like that. That's a part of our archaic past. But like when the day was done, the day was done. When there was a certain freedom for people to connect with their families when they went home. That structure does not exist anymore. So you need to be the one who makes the definitive decision to say, today is over. My work here is done. And I'm no longer going to start something new. I'm no longer going to think about any of the work from today or whatever, like it's done. And the best ways to do that are, number 1 is to establish a 90-minute bedtime window that allows you some flexibility to say, each night, my target is to go to bed between 10 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. There's 90 minutes that gives you enough flexibility on most nights, not all, but most nights that you can hit it. And the reason why that's important is because most sleep experts will tell you that your body falls into these circadian rhythms. And if you establish a regular bedtime window, then you will naturally start to wind down. Your body will naturally start to secrete melatonin, which is the sleep agent from your pineal gland. And then you will be able to regularly fall asleep faster and more effectively. Is that making sense so far, bud?
This is making a ton of sense, and I think this stage 1 is where I have the most work to do. It feels practical. I can do that. I can set look, it's going to be, maybe it's going to be late. Maybe it's going to be 11:30 to 1-ish, something like that, right? And then build my 6-7 hours of sleep in and go from there. But I think that this is going to be a good practice for the rest of my life in terms of setting these boundaries. And this is such a good place to start. So I like this one. This is what I'm gonna implement and see how it goes.
And what's powerful about that is like, okay, now 11:30 p.m. to 1 a.m., I'm targeting that for sleep. It gives structure to the rest of your day when someone says, hey, Bri, can we do a meeting at this time? And you'll be like, is that going to mess with that 90-minute window or not? And you're like, hey, maybe let's move it an hour earlier. Problem solved. So when you have that window, it gives you an ability to do that. And also, it gives you an opportunity to say to yourself, if I'm going to start a stressful work project or something that's going to require like activating my brain or some sort of chemistry, like emotional energy in my body, like my sleep window is 10 to 11:30. If it's 8 p.m., I actually won't start something because like I know my mind, I know my body that even if I were to get it done in an hour, that energy would be flying through me between the hours of 10 to 11:30 p.m. and that would screw my sleep up. So it'll be like, you know what? Nope. Like the day is done. I'll work on smaller tasks after 8 o'clock, maybe emails, these things that I can just quick catch and release. But like I would be very mindful of what stressful projects you start late in the evening.
That is a big one too, because it's going to affect the rest of my day going backwards. Because I often have this belief in the back of my head that, I don't have to do this activity right now. I can take that meeting. I can do this other thing, doing more, because I know after I eat dinner tonight, I can go knock out all the stuff on my own where I don't have to meet with people. And that's why I end up working until 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning.
That is exactly right, man. And then the last thing I'll say here, and this is something that you mastered, being mindful of what you eat in your last 1 to 2 hours before sleep. If your body is digesting food, then it's using energy to digest that food. Also, if you're having sugary things like a box of cookies or you're drinking lots of wine or that ice cream, then your blood sugar levels will spike and that will mess with the quality, your REM sleep, your deep sleep. So for stage 1 of mastering your evening routine, it's learning how to shut down the day, establish a 90-minute bedtime window, be mindful of what you eat in your last 1 to 2 hours, and then be mindful of starting any stressful work projects within the last, hour before your 90-minute window.
Dominic, if I nail all this, right, I hit 11:30 consistently for all the months, and like my rating goes from a 6 to like, let's say a 9 or a 10. What the hell are we going to talk about on this podcast?
We'll be talking about how to go from 9 to 10, dude. I'm down for it. If you're at a 9.9, I want to talk about how to go to 9.999. Let's talk about those micro moments, man, those micro improvements. So stage number 2, like once you have shut down today, what's really helpful is stage number 2 is preparing for tomorrow. Like giving a look for tomorrow to say, am I set up to have the most successful day? And the key elements here are just looking at your calendar first for the next day to see, are the most important things that you need to get done the next day, is there space in your calendar to do that? A lot of people you could tell me what you value, you can tell me what's important, but if I look at your calendar, is it going to reflect that? And oftentimes there's a big disparity between those two. And a big part of the process of looking at your calendar for the next day is writing down and anticipating your top 1 to 3 priorities. I'm always asking myself, what's the one thing that if I can get done tomorrow, that if it's done, I will feel the day is a win? And can I get that done before noon the next day? And whenever I do that and whenever I get it done, then even if other things maybe didn't get done that I wanted to, I know that the big thing did. And sometimes when I look at my calendar and I look at the one thing that I need to get done, I'm like, there's not space for it. Then that's where I call Callie, or that's where I cancel a meeting, or that's where I move things around to say, this is a non-negotiable. And that's how the important stuff in your life gets done versus constantly reacting to smaller games and what's urgent in your life. Fair enough?
Dude, that's a big one. That's another one of those where there's no reason to not. I can see, and when we're talking about stage 1 there, in terms of setting the bedtime, I could see where that could get squishy. If something comes up, got to get something out. I could see where there might be some blurred lines there. With this, there's no excuse not to do this. This would give me all kinds of peace and direction for the next day that would actually allow me to go to bed on time. So maybe this is where I start.
Yeah, great. So you're right. You have to be flexible sometimes with the sleep time. There's almost no reason not to do it every single day, right? And the last piece of preparing for tomorrow is, can you make it easy for yourself the night before to succeed the next day? And when I was working at Prudential and going into an office, I would always have my outfit laid out the night before. It was just like one less decision I needed to make the next day.
Your pink shirts, if I remember correctly.
Pink shirts, pink ties. Yeah, they were a big
Pink
hit.
shirt Dominic.
Yeah.
Yep.
People who are looking to establish a workout routine in the morning, just put like your workout shoes and your workout clothes right at the foot of the bed. So like you remember that. And my nights, like I have, some like herbal supplements that I take and I have my coffee. I set that all out the night before. So I just press a button, the supplements are there. I drink them and I'm done. So like I don't have to worry about going through those steps in the morning. And it feels almost like I've given myself a gift when I wake up the next day.
Something you do really well, Dominic, is you take these like what are really simple things and you implement them. Like you actually do them.
Do them and they actually work.
And they work. Yeah. And sometimes I look at these and I'm like, yeah, it's like too easy. It's got to be harder than that. Like it's got to be more painful than that. But these little simple things like really add up.
They do. And here's the part of that is like, there's a lot of these little things. You don't have to do them all. You know what I mean? Just like feel into the one or two things that like really resonate with you. And you're like, if I were to do that and like master that over the next couple of weeks or the next week, like I know there would be a win for you. Like this priority thing seems to be a big one. And the 90-minute bedtime window could also be another one. Take those two things, discard the rest. And like, we'll come back in another year and we'll get you from 8 to 10. Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Baby steps.
Stage number 3 is really winding it down. So like after you've shut down today, and after you've prepared for tomorrow, now it's like, what are the things ritualistically that allow you to just like wind your body down? And in this, like when you're winding it down, it's like, do you know the things that allow your body to relax? So for example, to fall asleep versus passing out. We talked about that, right? Now, if passing out is not ideal because you're basically falling asleep with like a lot of noise in your head, it will affect your REM sleep and your deep sleep. What other things could you use to allow your body to wind down? Here's some of the things that I do. An hour before bed, all of my lights are off. With a few exceptions, I have like a dimmer switch down to 25%. I put on like these blue blocking glasses that if I'm looking at anything on my phone or my computer, it's not allowing that blue light in, which messes with your pineal gland, which is the thing that secretes melatonin, which allows you to go to sleep. So like I have that going on. And I also know what my triggers are. So if I go into my work email within the last hour or a half hour of sleep, there could be something in there that may jolt me back up. So I don't look at it before I go to sleep. I don't look at news. I don't read any intellectual books that get my mind thinking. I will read fiction. And recently, like I've just been doing some, breath work and yoga before I go to bed to like clear the energy of the day. That allows me to relax, de-stress, clear my mind. And then I can gently go into bed and within 2 minutes, I'm out.
I know we haven't talked about morning routines on this because the topic of the podcast is nighttime routines, but I'm curious, do you get anxious at all? Like that you're going to miss something, that there's going to be something in the inbox that you could have taken care of and now you're not going to see it until you're done with your morning routine the next day?
No, not at all. I mean, like there's, over these last 5 or 6 years, as I've really started to like implement and master this stuff, I've realized like how few things are truly critical. I haven't missed a single thing that I haven't been able to restore or fix. I haven't missed a thing like an opportunity of a lifetime that passed me by because I, didn't look at my email in the last 30 minutes before bed or didn't look at my email the first hour before sleep or I didn't, check my email in that 1 hour window during the day. When I got off that anxiety cycle, which was what fueled my life, when I stepped back from that, I learned that like pretty much everything is fixable, is dealable with, is figure outable. So I sleep a lot easier and things can wait.
That's like 9.9 level ratings there. That's we're not there yet. I'm not there yet. Okay.
Yeah. So that's it, man. So we're talking about like that wind down is like for you, Bri, like understanding the things. Maybe it's playing soft music. Maybe it's breathing like I think what you talked about before, the 4-7-8 breathing, the gratitude practice of like, what's one thing I appreciated about today and then why. Those are the things that allow you to release the day and to go to sleep on your terms.
Yeah. I think there's a spiritual side to that gratitude practice too, where almost like a recognition of what and why I do appreciate things and calling that in the next day. So I like that.
Cool. I like that too. And those 3 stages, It could take you 10 minutes to do all those things. It could take you 60 minutes to do all those things, and like it could take you 45 minutes of the 60 minutes to just like shut down today. And then it may only take you 15 minutes to prepare for tomorrow and then wind it down. Like it's all got to be personal to you and it's not rigid. This will evolve over time. Play with this, figure out what works, and just take one or two of those things away that seem like the most energizing to you and then put them into practice for the next week or so.
I hope one day I can brag about this. I hope I can talk to my friends and be like, I go to bed awesome. Like my skills of bedtime are amazing. That's my goal.
It seems like you eliminated the embarrassing parts of passing out and like with a box of cookies on your lap. So you eliminate the embarrassing and now it's about bragging.
Yes, exactly. There's no in between. It's either embarrassing or bragging. That's life.
3 to 6 was about eliminating shame. 6 to 8 is about being able to brag. Okay.
That's exactly it. Yes.
I'm going to give you 5 of my best sleep tools that you can use to like facilitate, those 3 stages. And Brian, I'm going to hit these pretty quickly. Jump in if you hear anything here that's like super powerful for you. Number 1 is I want to recommend the Calm app. If you have a hard time winding your brain down, mentally and emotionally shutting down from the day, the number 1 app for sleep on the market is the Calm app. It's Apple's number 1 most downloaded app in health and fitness. It's got guided meditations and even have bedtime stories for adults. If you're into that kind of thing, they have a free version and they have a $70 annual subscription so that you can just buy it and get access to all of their guided meditations. One of the reasons why I like Calm also is LeBron James, I believe, is a spokesperson for them. The NBA just signed like a deal, I believe, with Calm because in the NBA, they're treating sleep deprivation the same way that the NFL is treating concussions. It's like their concussions because like with NBA players, typically traveling, short schedule, short turnaround, they're sleep deprived and it has a big impact on their long-term well-being. So they're taking it really seriously and Calm is something that they've partnered with LeBron as the face of the NBA on.
I don't know why we didn't just start this podcast with that. LeBron's doing it. So
LeBron's doing it, so should you.
Get it straight, yeah.
Sleep tool number 2 are blue light blocking glasses. So these are the things like if you're going to be on your phone, your laptop, iPad late into the night, the blue lights that come through trick your brain into believing that it's still daytime. So I put on these blue light blocking glasses. Like when we do our men's group meeting on Monday nights for 2 hours or Zoom, I'm always wearing the blue light blockers because I don't want 2 hours of blue light in my eyes, right before I go to sleep.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that because I do see you every Monday night wearing these on Zoom. I'm like, man, he looks
geeky.
Silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? I sleep like a baby, so I'll take it. And I use Swanwick blue light blocking glasses. I know the founder, James Swanwick, Swanee. You can get these for $69. I'm going to link all these in the show notes. The Gravity Blanket is a game changer. I love this thing. So the Gravity Blanket is a weighted blanket, weighs about 15 to 25 pounds. You can choose what version you want. What it's basically mimicking is, how a baby loves swaddling? Babies feel comforted when they're in their mother's womb. And then they love being swaddled when they come out. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And the Gravity Blanket purportedly relaxes your parasympathetic nervous system the same way that maybe like 4, 7, 8 breathing will. So it feels like a nice hug when you sleep. It was one of Time Magazine's best inventions of 2018, and it's about $200. I know that they constantly do sales on that, but that's been a big one for me. The Oura Ring is the 4th one. You've heard me talk ad nauseum about this. This is the most accurate sleep tracker on the market. The NBA just purchased a bunch of Oura Rings for the NBA players to also track body temperature as like an early indication for coronavirus. Now, I've used the Oura Ring to measure the quality of my sleep, and all these changes that I've been making. And I've been able to notice a significant difference in my deep sleep and how restful my sleep is. It's about $300 that you can buy, and there's an app that transmits all of its data in a very, very user-friendly format. So if you want to track the power of all this work, Oura Ring is probably the best in the business. And the final thing that I'll recommend is for anyone who is a hot sleeper, who overheats at night, that like sweats in their sleep, and now is one of those people, the Chili Pad is a game changer. It's a cooling blanket. Goes over your mattress, and then you put your sheets on top of it. They make it for king size beds. So like there's, a cooling temperature for the right side of the bed, a separate cooling temperature for the left side of the bed. If like you're sleeping with a partner who's got different temperatures. And I sleep right through the night now. I never overheat because I feel cool when I go to sleep. And I believe that's about $1,200 for a king size version. It's pretty expensive, but it's worth the pristine sleep you'll get. And again, I'm going to link all of those in the show notes. So you got 5 sleep tools, 3 stages to a powerful evening routine. You got those 6 questions that we asked to figure out whether or not your evening routine is sabotaging you. And Bri, I just want to sign off here, hearing how you feel about the future of your startup business with these new evening routines. Awareness is in your mind. How are you feeling right now, buddy?
Honestly, I'm happy to answer that, but all I can see is this photo of the chili pad that you have in front of us here.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how this affects your sex life. Like, is it weird having that on your bed?
No, you don't feel it. It just feels like having like a mattress cover on your bed, like a soft mattress cover.
It looks very big. There's like dials and stuff on it.
No, those dials go on the floor. Like the boxes go on the floor. You fill them with water and those stay on the sides of the bed. Yeah, those don't go on the bed.
Okay. So it doesn't make your bed squishy or anything like that.
No. You wouldn't even know if people got into the bed, if she wouldn't even know it's there unless you turned on, and like the temperature. She was like, wow, why is my bed cool?
She would know if you had those sunglasses on though. That's for sure.
Yeah. You want to take those off. They're not.
Yeah. Maybe you do one of your solo podcasts about how you deconstruct the... I mean, that's a fair question. Like, how do you deal with nighttime routines when you have a partner over or something like that,
That could be the next step. That we do this.
Yeah. I know when I was younger and I used to go out and drinking a lot more often and stay out till 2 a.m., like, I couldn't even do a morning routine because I was doing that.
Yeah.
Like, the morning routine was kind of a joke. So I'm curious in quarantine... Not running a startup, this all seems pretty straightforward. But when we start to introduce kids and partners and other items, I could see this stuff being a little tougher to implement.
Well, it needs to be flexible.
I think you've got some great tools, yeah.
It needs to be flexible. And all of this stuff I just shared with you has enough flexibility built into it for you to design it in the way that works. I mean, if you think about those 3 stages of an evening routine, which is just shutting down the day, preparing for tomorrow, and then winding it down, like you can be an artist and create whatever you want inside of that with your partner, with kids involved, all that stuff. There's enough flexibility there. So hopefully whoever's listening to this can take that away and say, I'm going to take that. I'm going to discard that. That doesn't fit into my current life situation. Great. I'll leave that on the side. But you at least have enough structure for you to make it work for you.
I got 2 takeaways for this, Dom, that I'm going to implement starting today. Number 1 is the priorities before I go to bed.
Yep.
What are my top 3 priorities? What's going to feel really good if I get done for sure that day? That's a non-negotiable. I am going to set the 90-minute window. I know I said this last time too. I'm going to set that 90-minute window, and it did work for a while, so I'm going to recommit to that. Those are the 2 things that I'm definitely going to do. And if I can add some of these other gravity blankets, Nora rings, and everything else, great. But that's where I'm going to start to get me from at least 6 to 8.
Beautiful. We'll check in with you in 1 year and we'll take you from 8 to 10, buddy.
And I want to know when you're getting that dog, because that dog is going to interrupt your nighttime routine.
Yeah. I'm sure these evening routines will change as soon as I get a dog. All right, man.
Alrighty.
Hey, so like I mentioned in the introduction, this whole conversation was Brian and I unpacking a section of my new book, On Purpose Leadership, which is a field guide to living and leading your life on purpose. And the section of the book that we just unpacked was a chapter called On Practices. And practices are the daily rituals, habits, and routines that you intentionally design to make sure that you don't drift, that you do live a life of intentionality so you can feel a sense of control and connection to your purpose on a daily basis. And we just honed in on one of those specific practices, like the evening routine. There's a number of others in the book. So I encourage you to go online, pre-order it right now, anywhere books are sold online. On Purpose Leadership, master the art of leading yourself so you can inspire and impact others.